Good morning and welcome to all the participants and to our resource person. It is our pleasure to have with us Dr. Lakshmi Tirlapur with us. Ma'am is from FRI SRSS Dharwad. And the topic of deliberation chosen by ma'am is climate change, mitigation and adaptive technologies awareness. Ma'am, you are audible as well as visible and your presentation is also visible. Please start.
Okay. Welcome you all for the today's topic of discussion on climate change mitigation and adaptive technologies and their awareness. As you know, what is mean by weather? Weather is a short-term atmosphere at a particular place and time. Means is happening outside your window just now, that is called weather. And climate is the average weather in a given period or in a given area over a longer period of time. Climate means it is a long-term concept where weather is a short-term concept. Climate change, if you see any changes, that is when we use the variability means when we data, then it is called climate variability, but not the climate change. Many comparing it weather data of more than 30 years, then it is called climate change. So whatever the mitigating measures we are taking are not the climate change mitigating measures, instead they are climate variability mitigating measures. Then why this climate change is happening in the atmosphere now? It is mainly because of the greenhouse gases like CO2, methane, nitrous oxide, and fluorinated gases. 8 ppm, and it is a main long-lived greenhouse gas in the atmosphere. It remains for about a century and even longer. If you produce 1 ppm of methane, it will stay for about 100 years in an atmosphere. And this the methane, it contributing about 16% of the total greenhouse gas emission and more potential than that of the CO2. Approximately 40% of the methane is emitted into the atmosphere by natural sources like wetlands, and 60% comes from human activities like cattle breeding, rice cultivation, fossil fuel exploitation, landfills, biomass burning. And the third greenhouse gas, that is this is generated from the androgenic processes like soil biomass burning, fertilizer use, and various industrial processes. Every year, concentration of the greenhouse gases is in coming 9 years, the peak concentration would reach. And what is the safe level of these greenhouse gases in the atmosphere is it should be in the range of 350 to 400 ppm of CO2 equivalents. But the present concentration is about 454 ppm of CO2 equivalents. Because of this increase in the concentration, it leads to when the concentration.
Madam, do you have a better connection? I think there is some latency in your internet connection. Hello? Hello?
It leads to global warming.
Dr. Lakshmi? Hello, Dr. Lakshmi, are you able to hear me? Hello? Again, disconnect. Hello, Dr. Lakshmi, are you there? Please be patient. Our resource person is having a connection outage. Just a minute, she will be joining back. I just called her. Hello?
Hello, sir.
You're not audible. Yeah. You're audible now. Yeah. Can we
Okay.
start with the presentation again?
Sir. Okay.
Can you start with the PPT?
Okay. From where? Which slide?
Present. Hello?
Hello.
Can you present now? Can you click on present now?
Presenting, sir.
No,
My
we have not
slides are
started.
not.
It has not started.
Okay,
It has
wait,
not
wait.
started yet. Present now, entire screen. Click on the screen and share.
Okay. Okay,
Yes.
sir.
Yes. Participants, can you tell which slide ma'am was on and exactly when the disconnection happened?
CO2, CH4 concentrations, those things, sir.
Yes. Ma'am, can you go to that slide, please?
This one.
This one.
And make it full screen.
Okay.
Yeah. Perfect.
Okay. This concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere. Hello. Concentration of this CO2 in the atmosphere is 408 ppm. It is the main long-lived greenhouse gas in the atmosphere. It remains for centuries in the atmosphere. If we produce 1 unit of this CO2, it will remain for a century or a longer. And next is the methane. This is the second most important greenhouse, long-living greenhouse gas in the atmosphere. It contributes for 16% of the total greenhouse gas emission in the atmosphere. And this is 26% more potential than the CO2. Next, that is the nitrous oxide, which contributes for 6% of the total greenhouse gas emission. And this is mainly emitted from the sources like anthropogenic sources, biomass burning, use of inorganic fertilizers, and other various industrial processes. Every year, concentration of greenhouse gases is increasing at the rate of 3.7 ppm per year. Peak concentration of these greenhouse gases could reach in coming 9 years. Safe level of this greenhouse gas concentration is about 350 to 400 ppm. But the present concentration of greenhouse gases is 454 ppm. Because of the higher concentration of these greenhouse gases, global warming is taking place. How this global warming is taking place means whenever the sun's radiation emitting from the Earth's surface, that is the reflected rays of the sun, are trapped by the atmospheric greenhouse gases. Because of the higher concentration of these greenhouse gases, they get trapped. It leads to increase in the global warming. Actually, these greenhouse gases are required for the life to exist on the Earth, because otherwise, without greenhouse gases, the atmosphere would be more cooler compared to the normal. So, these greenhouse gases are required to maintain the temperature of the atmosphere and for the life to exist on the Earth. If the concentration of these greenhouse gas sources increases, then it leads to global warming. The scenario of greenhouse gases in world is among the different countries. China is the major greenhouse gas producer in the country, followed by United States and Europe. India ranks fourth in the total global greenhouse gas emission list. Among the different sectors, energy sector is contributing 72%, followed by agriculture and land use changes and forestry contributing 17%. And if you come to the scenario in India, India is emitting about 3,000 million tons of CO2 equivalent every year, which accounts for 7% of the total global emissions. Out of which 64, out of the 3,000 million tons of CO2 equivalent, agriculture sector is contributing 344 million tons of CO2 equivalent every year, because 64% of the Indian population is depending on the agriculture, and it is the largest contributor, second largest contributor of greenhouse gases. Among the different sectors, followed by energy sector and agriculture sector, land use change and industrial processes, enteric fermentation in the livestock, these are the major contributors of the greenhouse gases. Next, the contribution of this, how this agriculture and livestock are contributing to the greenhouse gas emissions, like nitrous oxide is emitted originally from the field, that is whenever we are applying inorganic fertilizer to the field and the crop residue decomposition, and while we are cultivating the organic soil, and from the stored manures nitrous oxide is emitted. Methane is emitting from the agricultural sources, mainly from the enteric fermentation in the rumen of the animals and from the aerobic decomposition of the stored manures. Agriculture soils can either emit or absorb carbon dioxide. The difference is determined by the net effect of carbon dioxide absorbed from the atmosphere by growing crops. The subsequent storage in the soil can come from the crop residue and soil organic matter. And with respect to livestock, how the livestock is contributing to the greenhouse gas emission means, in order to meet the feed requirement of the animals, we are going for the land use changes. Means by that is land use changes. These by the degradation of the forest or other lands for cultivation of fodder, we are going for all those things. Because of that, this land use change will affect the natural carbon cycle, which consequently releases the high amount of carbon into the atmosphere, increasing the greenhouse gas emissions. And when we are producing these fodders, we are applying manures and all. During such a situation also, we are contributing to the greenhouse gas emissions. Followed by this animal production, like beef and dairy cattle units are contributing 64% of the total livestock greenhouse gas emissions. And pig, poultry, buffalo, these small ruminants, they are contributing only 7 to 10% of the total greenhouse gas emissions. And next, the manures which are produced from these livestock is also emitting methane and nitrous oxide. Next, among the different states in India, Uttar Pradesh emerging as top agriculture and livestock greenhouse gas emitter, followed by Andhra Pradesh and Madhya Pradesh. With respect to the rice paddies, because rice paddies and enteric fermentation, these two are the major contributors of greenhouse gases with respect to agriculture. And with respect to rice paddy emissions, Andhra Pradesh stands first. And with respect to buffalo emissions of methane, Uttar Pradesh is standing first because of the highest population of livestock. What this impact of this what impacts we have if we have the climate change. Because of the higher concentration of these greenhouse gases, more heat is trapped in our atmosphere, leading to global warming. Because of this warming, what happens? The ice glaciers will melt, and because of the warming, more cloud formation, very thick cloud formation takes place, which leads to hurricanes and typhoons also taking place. Very frequent drought, floods are taking place, and along with this climate change will affect the wind direction of the wind direction, which brings leading to drought and unpredictable weather. And along with this, agriculture and livestock uh, crop production changes, new pests and disease outbreaks will take place, soil degradation will happen, and we will go for intensive cultivation again because of this, and all this will have an effect on the food production. And like that, in case of because of decrease in the food production and all, and it will affect the forage quality, and the quality of the feed of the crop and forage will get affected. Water availability will be reduced, and the milk and milk production decreases. Livestock outbreak of disease will take place, and these are the different impacts of the climate change in agriculture and livestock. What are the mitigating and adaptive measures we must take in order to overcome these climate variabilities? Like mitigating measures, there exists some difference between mitigating measures and adaptive measures. Mitigating measures here, what we are doing is we are reducing its source, means the source of its emission we are reducing, or we are enhancing the sink. Means the where it get accumulates, that part we are enhancing. In mitigating measures, we are just, it is a long-term concept, it is a very long-term concept, means either in case of mitigating measure, we are either reducing the source itself or we are enhancing the sink. Whereas in case of adaptive measures, we are just adjusting to the climate change by adopting some technologies or some measures. They are called adaptive measures. For example, zero tillage, crop residue management, improved composting. These are the mitigating measures. And when we are following summer flowing, broadbed furrow method for conserving water, farm pond for harvesting of the rainwater to use it for the critical stages of irrigation, critical stages of the crop growth. These comes under the adaptive measures. This shows the exact difference what we can see between the adaptive measures and mitigating measures. In case of mitigating measures, here we are avoiding the emission and sequestering CO2 from the atmosphere or in the point itself. And this is the mitigation is the long-term concept, and taking of mitigating measures is more important than just adjusting to the climatic conditions, adjusting to the climate changes. Then what are these mitigating and adaptive measures we must take in order to adjust for this climate variabilities? We will be studying one by another according to crop cultivation practices. First one is the in situ moisture conservation practice. It is one of the important adaptive measures in order to meet the moisture stress of the crop. This will help. These soil and moisture conservation in situ moisture conservation practices helps to improve the soil structure, soil porosity, and increases the infiltration rate. It leads to increasing soil water storage and helps to withstand the moisture stress. Selection of this particular technology depending upon the topography of the field and the rainfall distribution of that region and type of the soil we are having. In that, the summer sowing is the first important adaptive measure. That is, when we are doing the summer sowing, it will help you to kill the that is pests and diseases, pupae, whatever the present in the soil. Along with that, we are exposing the soil, underneath soil for the sun, so that it will help us to capture more amount of water, which in order to overcome the stress, water stress in the coming days. Uh, Next one is the compartmental bunding. This compartmental bunding is an effective moisture conservative practice in dryland agriculture. This is practiced in the areas where there is a slope of the land is less than 1%. Here we are doing some small compartments. These compartments act as a dam to store the rainwater for the longer period of time, and this increases the water holding capacity of the soil. This can be formed while flowing itself or before the sowing. It reduces the formation of cracks and increases the infiltration rate of the soil. Next is the broadbed or conservative furrow method of irrigation. Here, there is not a much so much difference between broadbed and conservative furrow. Here, these adaptive measures will help to reduce the runoff of water and increases the water use efficiency, increases the crop productivity by 5 to 10%, and it helps to overcome the moisture stress during non-rainy days. It saves the water up to 20 to 25%. It helps in better weed management and reducing the crop gouging. Next, these are the results of some of the experiments conducted by All India Coordinated Research Project in Dryland Agriculture. This is with the help of this compartmental bunding and all this, they are able to, in different crops, they are able to overcome their moisture stress and also increase the soil infiltration rate and to meet the water stress during the non-rainy season. And the next is the zero tillage. This is one of the important mitigating measures that farmers are actually not adopting this. Even if you are making them aware of, they are not ready to adopt this. But it has a very good scientific background. Because of this zero tillage, number of large, when we are not tilling our land, it leads to closure of large pores and opening of the small pores, which holds the water. Because of this, it helps in increasing the water holding capacity of the soil. No tilled soils tends to be more cooler compared to the tilled soils, and it reduces the carbon sequestration. It increases carbon sequestration and reduces threat of global warming. It has a zero tillage has many disadvantages. Because of zero tillage, what happens? Because of zero tillage, yield levels in the initial stages will be less. But in the subsequent stages, they get stabilized, but in the initial stages, yield levels will be less. And because of the zero tillage, weed growth will be more. Weed pressure in your land will be more. So, it demand for the high labor. It is one of the social disadvantage of this zero tillage method. Because of the weed density, more weed density, farmers will go for application. If labors are not available, then farmers will go for application of the herbicides, which will have again the environmental. So this is one of the environmental disadvantage that zero tillage is having. As per our study and as per our research, none of the farmers are ready to take this zero tillage. According to their opinion, they feel that without tilling the land, if you sow the seeds, it will not permit for the root growth. So we will not get a good crop growth stand with their opinion. Next is the rainwater harvesting and recycling. Rainwater harvesting, it takes importance due to increasing rainfall variability, depletion of groundwater level and rising of the temperature. Around 27.5 million hectares of Indian area is under rain-fed cultivation. So we need to harvest the runoff water and store them in the farm pond during the Kharif season, and it can be used for the supplementary irrigation during the dry spell or in the critical stages of the crop growth. This leads to considerable improvement in the crop yield. Along with this, growing of some grasses around the farm pond will also helpful to avoid the soil erosion, and these grasses act as a supplementary source of water to the farmers. Next best adoptive measure is the soil management. That is, this we have to manage the soil. By managing the soil, loss of fertility in the soil by erosion can be minimized. This can be soil management means we have to apply more amount of organic matter to the soil. This application of more amount of organic matter improves the soil aggregation, which in turn improves the soil erosion and the water holding capacity of the soil, reduces the soil erosion. This can be achieved with this organic matter in the soil can be enhanced by crop rotation with the legumes or application of compost, manures, or incorporation of crop residues, green leaf manuring or green manuring we should follow. This in situ green manuring or green leaf manuring helps in fixing the nitrogen in soil But the majority of the farmers are not going for the in situ green manuring because it will take some time. We have to grow that in green manuring crop and then incorporate. In this crowded area where there is a pressure to produce so much as possible with the available land, it is very often difficult to convince the farmer to take the land out of the food production to go for the in situ green manuring crop. During such a situation, it will advise to go for the green leaf manuring. As per our research in Khanapur Taluk of Belgaum districts of Karnataka state, farmers they are going for the Sunham green manuring. Because of that, they are able to get good returns and the products which they are getting they are having a long shelf life and they are getting premium prices for their products. In our area, farmers are taking green manuring with the help of Sunham. Next is the seed treatment. Seed treatment it is also one of the adaptive measures for the climate change. We are going for seed treatment just we are applying either fungicide or insecticide treatment in order to combat these soil-borne diseases and seed-borne diseases. This seed treatment helps in preventing the spread of plant diseases, protects the seeds from seed rot and seedling blight, and it improves the germination. There are different types of seed treatment, like we are just disinfecting the seeds by eradicating the fungal spores that are established in the seed coat. And the next method is seed protection. For this purpose, seed protection, seeds and seedlings. The seeds which are protecting the purpose of seed protection is to protect the seeds and end seedlings from the organisms in the soil, which might otherwise cause decay of the seeds before the germination. For that, to prevent that, we are going for the seed protection. Condition under which we are going for the seed treatment is in case of injured seeds, that is broken seeds and all, and in case of diseased seeds. When the seeds are diseased, during such a situation, we are going for the seed treatment. And whenever we are sowing the seeds in undesirable conditions, that seed should overcome such a situation and it should grow. For that, to get the stability, we are going for the seed treatment. And even in some cases, we are going for seed treatment of just disease-free seeds. Also, we are going for the seed treatment in order to overcome the soil-borne diseases. And next best, this adaptive measure is using of nitrogen fertilizers more effectively and the balanced application of the nutrients. In India, nutrient use efficiency is only 30% when compared to the other countries. The main source of this is uneven and inefficient method of fertilizer application. In India, fertilizer usage is increasing from year to year. India is consuming about 18 million tons of NPK every year. Indian soils are actually deficiting zinc, iron, copper, manganese, but we are just applying urea because it is cheaply available and it will give you a good health. You will see that our field should be green all the time. In that mindset, we are just applying the urea which is cheaply available. But in India, fertilizer recommendations are just based on the research conducted in the research stations. But actually, each fields are different in their nutrient status. If you apply the nutrients based on the recommendation of research conducted in some other places, it will lead to over application in some places and under application in other places. Along with this, farmer in a eager to get more foliage growth, they are applying the more amount of fertilizer, nitrogen fertilizers. This results in large loss of nitrogen through volatilization and unnecessary increment in the cost of production. So it is advisable to have a soil health card based on which fertilizer application should be decided. A soil health card assesses the current status of the soil health. So, and which fertilizer has to be applied and which not to be applied is advised in the soil health card. As per our survey in Khanapur Taluk, as per our research work, applying of more fertilizer in case of sugarcane, it leads to good foliage growth and millibug incidence is also increasing. These millibugs are infestation below the leaves will take place, and even if you take the spraying operation, it will not, that spray will not reach to the targeted places that insects. Because of this, because of the over application of nitrogen, the incidence of that is crop loss is also taking place because of the low resistance power of the plants. So higher application of nitrogen will make the grain chalky in case of food grains, and the soil test based application of deficient fertilizer will also increase the crop yield by 60 to 40% and reduces the cost of cultivation. Next, application of potassium fertilizer. Actually, potassium fertilizers it is one of the adoptive measures. This is required for the disease resistance, drought tolerance, and to get the very bold seeds and to get a good flavor and size of the fruits. We need this potassium fertilizers. So, application of potassium fertilizers in a required quantity has to be followed by the farmer. And application of anti-transparent. This is one of the important adaptive measure for the moisture stress conditions. Application of this anti-transparent will reduce the size of the stomata, or it will reduce the number of stomata, or it will leads to closing of the stomata. Application of anti-transparent helpful for reducing the water loss from the stomata, and these anti-transparent form the colorless film on the leaf surface that allows the diffusion of gases but not the water vapor. And the next was growing of short duration and early maturing crops. Early maturing crops, they yield a positive harvest within the 3 months of planting to protect the farmers in case of low rainfall and during drought situation. Here, these are some of the varieties which are the farmers should cultivate. These are the short duration varieties of green gram, black gram, cowpea. The farmers in our steady area are cultivating this in order to protect the crop loss due to severe rains of late rains of during August and July. Next best this adaptive measure is the composting. Composting and manuring, these two are the different concepts. Composting means here this is one of the mitigating measure as I suggested, because whatever the organic matter is, it decomposes in the presence of oxygen and it produces the compost. And this farm manure in farm pits we are producing, that is producing under the anaerobic condition. Whatever the byproduct it is producing, it is not the compost, it is the digestate. That is produced in the absence of oxygen, it produces the methane. Whenever the decomposition taking place in the absence of oxygen, it produces methane and carbon dioxide. Whereas in case of composting, it is not producing methane, we are reducing the source of methane production here. So it is one of the important mitigating measures. Then next is the managing of the rice fields. It is one of the important mitigating measures of the climate change, because area under rice cultivation in India is 44 million hectares, out of which 7 million hectares is under upland rice and 37 million hectares is under lowland rice cultivation. This lowland rice cultivation is the major source of methane from the rice field. Methane emissions in this situation can be controlled by allowing the field dry after irrigation rather than continuously flooded. For this, modified rice cultivation practices such as tree method of irrigation and the selection of short duration of crop varieties, fertilizer management strategy, that is switching from urea to ammonium sulfate fertilizers. All these practices will reduce the methane emissions. In case of modified method like tree method, methane emission can be cut down up to 50% compared to the traditional method of paddy cultivation. Along with this, as per our survey, farmers were able to get 30 to 30% increase in their yield levels by modified tree method of modified rice cultivation practices, and 40% reduction in the water usage was observed. Next is the mulching. It reduces the soil water evaporation, increases the germination percentage, weed growth, and protects the root from the fluctuating and extreme temperature, changing microclimate by reducing the soil's temperature so that necessary water loss can be minimized. It increases the soil organic carbon, which helps to overcome the mid-season drought. There are different types of mulches we can use, either organic mulch or the inorganic mulch, such as when we are using the straw, dry leaves, bark clipping, sawdust, and grass clipping, they come under the organic mulches. And if we are using plastic or gravels, the stones, they come under the inorganic mulches. Another classification of mulch is the surface mulch and vertical mulch. These all plastic mulch, carbon mulch, grass mulch, these all come under the surface mulch. And whenever we are taking up the trenches around the field and filling that trench with some straw and up to 10 centimeter height above the above the ground level, that comes under the vertical mulch. In Belgaum district of Karnataka state, farmers are using plastic mulch. Because of that, in Chile, they are getting 50% more yield, and soil nutrient holding capacity has also increased, and water requirement of the crop, requirement also reduced. And these are the examples of some of the crops where we are followed this different mulches and able to get higher yield compared to the normal cultivation. Next is the resilient crop and cropping system. What is this resilient crop means? Propensity of the system to retain its original structure and productivity by using types of the crop, sequence of the crop, and practices in growing them. For example, whenever there is a delay in rain or during such a situation, without affecting our original income level, we should adjust, or we should just go for other crop, which will giving at least not same return, at least near to that yield level we should get. Such a crop plan we must plan, and we must select such a plants in order to stabilize economically. In that, there are some resilient cropping systems like intercropping, that is growing of more than one crop in order to produce more yield, or in order to overcome the losses occurring due to one crop will get yield from the other crop. In case of intercropping, the common goal is to get greater yield in a given piece of land by making use of the resources or ecological processes that otherwise would not be utilized by the single crop. These intercrops act as a trap cropping, it acts as a repellent crop, or it is a push and pull crop. When in case of trap cropping, this intercrop will repel the main insect attacks in the main crop, and it increases the yield of the main crop. And in case of repellent crop, because of the repellent action of that intercrop, the pest and disease incidence will be again reduced. And push and pull cropping is the combination of both the trap crop and repellent crop. Main objectives of intercropping is to increase the total productivity and efficient utilization of the resources, and efficient pest and disease management, soil and water conservation, and to improve the soil fertility. While we are taking the intercropping, we must have some knowledge that these intercropping, whatever the crops we are taking the intercrops, they should not compete for the resources like water, nutrients, and light. And these two crops must have variation in their growth duration. Peak period of growth of these two crops should not coincide with each other. And we must go for the cultivation of commercial crop plus food crop as an intercrop in order to get the food, that is food grains, and also to get the cash. And these intercrops should be complementary to each other, should not be competitive. And the different types of intercropping like mixed cropping, row or stripped cropping, and relay cropping. These are the different methods of types of intercropping we must follow. And along with this, our farmers should go for the integrated farming system. It helps to increase the farm productivity by increasing the diversification and the resource integration. The main elements of IFS is that it should consisting of watershed, farm bound. We must be using biopesticides, biofertilizers, biogas, solar energy, vermicompost making, green manuring, rainwater harvesting. All these should be involved in the IFS system. And the different IFS components like crop husbandry, livestock, poultry, horticulture, aquaculture, apiculture, mushroom cultivation, all these must be involved. These are these IFS concept is mainly to get the stabilized income. If one source is get affected, one component is get affected, and you must get income. You will get at least income from the other component. That is the main theme of this. So this is one of the important adoptive measures. As per our survey, as per our research, majority of the farmers are following the agriculture and livestock enterprise in order to overcome their economic losses during uncertainty. And next, every farmer must follow the contingent crop planning. Why this contingency crop planning is required? Because there is not assured rains in all the time. We will not get assured rains all the time. So there will be some delays or some early onset of the rain will take place. If there is a delay in rain by 2 weeks, means we will be getting in rains in June. If there is a delay, then we must go for some selection of some crop varieties which are early maturing, short duration, and all. If there is an intermittent dry spell, then it will affect the germination of the plant, and it will affect the stem elongation, leaf area expansion, branching, tillering, and when there is a delay in rainfall during the intermittent rainfall, dry spell, when the crop is at the flowering stage, then it leads to anthesis, pollination will affect, and number of grain spots, number of grain spots, number decreases, and during such a situation, we have to plan something, contingency, that is alternative planning every farmer should have in order to overcome these uncertainties. Like that, whenever there is a delay in 2 weeks of monsoon, then we have to go for the varieties which are early maturing and short duration. For example, if you wish to go groundnut, then go for the GPPD and GL24 variety, which is short duration, and we must follow some of the agronomic practices like compartmental bundling, moisture conservation, opening the bed furrow for every 10 rows. These are the different methods, different alternatives we should follow if there is a rainfall is delayed by 2 weeks. Like that, when the rainfall is delayed by 4 weeks, we must have some adaptive measures. For that, we have to better to go for maize, cowpea, sunflower, instead of groundnut, soybean, black gram, and kharif sorghum. And we must go for the agronomic practices like enriched compost application, compartmental bundling for moisture conservation, conservative furrow. Like this, with these practices we should follow. When there is a delay means when there is a onset of monsoon, means regular onset of monsoon takes place and followed by 15 to 20 days dry spell takes place. During that situation, we must carry out frequent intercultivation, crop residue mulching, and spraying of anti-transparent, and conservative furrows, opening up of opening the furrow and ridge tying we have to follow. And during the mid-season drought also we must follow certain listed contingency measures we should follow in order to reduce our losses. And when there is unusual rains or untimely rains, during such a situation, when crop is seedling or in nursery stage, we should go for the draining of the excessive water, intercultivation and application of N has to be done. And when the crop is a vegetative stage and then floods or heavy rains take place, then we have to drain out our excess water. We should go for weeding and intercultivation operations. And these are some of the measures that we should take in order to overcome the feed and water shortage during the climate variabilities. Actually, the climate change not only leads to the water shortage in India. Already, India is facing a water shortage because only 4% of the area is available for fodder production in India. There exists a supply and demand gap in case of fodder. Dry fodder shortage is about 21% in India, and green fodder shortage is about 26%. Climate change will still widen this gap. Usually, the yield levels of the fodder crops is not going to be affected much by the climate change. Climate change is going to affect indirectly to the livestock sector because majority of the farmers are feeding the bulk product of the agriculture crops to the livestock. They are not solely growing the fodder crops and feeding them. No, they are not following like that. They are just taking the crop residue and feeding to the animals. Because of this untimely, unseasonal rains, the quality of the fodder get reduces, which is having the ultimately the impact on the feed availability and feed fodder. As per our survey, majority of 90% of the farmers are not taking the benefits of these government initiatives like fodder banks and Goshala. These are the different government initiatives, government which is taking during the drought situations or flood situations. Because these fodder banks will be opening only in the places, only in some places, not on all the regions. Farmer has to travel about 10 to 15 kilometers to buy the fodder. So it is not economical for him to travel so much distance to get that. Only they are not giving the full amount of fodder. They are giving some precise amount of fodder to the farmer. So farmer has to travel so much distance to buy that amount of feed, which is not sufficient. So farmers are not taking benefit of this fodder banks, and farmers are not sending their livestock to the Goshala, because if they send their livestock to Goshala during the feed stress conditions, if they keep their livestock with them, they will get at least half a liter water, half a liter of milk, which will be helpful for meeting their needs. If they send it to Goshala, the net benefit will be zero. So whenever such a stress feed shortage occurs, the farmer will not send their livestock to Goshala. Instead, they will sell them instead of sending into Goshala. So these are the government initiatives, but the farmers are not taking advantage of this fodder bank and Goshala as per our research in our study area. And the government will take other measures in order to overcome the feed requirement during drought and flood, like it manage the gomalas of each village and insist the sugar factories to store the bagasse, adding the chlorine tablets to the and bleaching powder to supply the clean water to the animals, and opening up of the mobile emergency veterinary hospitals, and water tanks are arranged to supply the water to the villages. These are different measures, but the farmers are, as per our survey, farmers are not taking the benefit of these two measures. Next best this adoptive measure one should have during the climate variability is reallocation of the given amount of feed. Whenever there is a shortage of feed for the animal, then farmers should reallocate the given amount, whatever the feed they are having, by diverting that feed to the milk producing animals and to the growing animals, and feeding less to the other animals. And densification of feed. farmers should go for the densification of feed. It can be done to reduce the transportation cost. It involves the compress or to densify the bulky feed. It reduces the storage cost, and this densification leads to less spoilage of the feed and increases the quality of the feed. So farmers can go for the densification of the feed. Next, mixed crop livestock system. Means crops provide because crop residue is the main feed for the animals. Often, and these animals in turn provide them to the cattle to serve the fertilizer need. As per our survey, in case of hilly zone of Karnataka state, 95% of the farmers are holding livestock as a supplementary enterprise along with the agriculture. It has become like a tradition. They feel that farming is not a complete without a livestock. But in case of transitional zones like of Karnataka state, farmers are not holding about 60 to 65%. Farmers are only holding the livestock, but not all the farmers. So, because of the more feed shortage they are experiencing in their regions. So, for those people, we have to make them aware of different storing methods of feed and supplementary feed sources. Next, that reducing the wastage by chopping. This is one of the adoptive measures that we should adopt during the feed shortage, because chopped feed, it reduces the feed wastage by 15 to 20%. So it is advisable to go for feeding the chopped feed instead of bulky feed. And the feeding of the supplementary feed blocks mixture. These supplementary feed block mixture are the nutrient supplementation strategy during the drought. Several options are available for supplying energy to the cattle during the drought situations. Low quality, low quality forage can also be ammoniated to increase its digestibility. These supplementary feed blocks, it provides the complete nutrients to the feed to the animals, and it increases the milk yield of the animals during the means we can adopt this technology for the feed in a feed shortage area. Next is the crop residue management. We should whenever we are doing hay stock, we are preparing that hay should be dried and completely dried for some days, and then we should prepare hay. Otherwise, the quality of the feed will get reduced. So we should take care of care while preparing the hay. Next is the silage making. The difference between that crop residue and this feed and the silage is that silage is the it is the grass that and other grass, which is when we are making the silage when the plant is at the green stage, when the powder is in green stage. To make the silage, we need a airtight container or a pit to store in it. Put the base of that pit with either a stone or the plastic, and on that we should keep that green powder and cover with some polythene or a sand or anything, so to make it airtight. And after some months, after few months of 90 days, at least after 3 months, you can use it for feeding the animals. This is also one of the method of feeding the livestock to meet out the powder shortage. And use of the unconventional feed sources. Whenever the required amount of feed is availability is not there from the conventional sources, then we can go for the non-conventional feed sources, such as feeding of bubble pods, mango, tamarind seed pods, and subabul seeds, rain tree pods. Like that we have to do. And feeding of cactus, we can go for. These are the different unconventional feed sources which farmer can feed to their animals during the feed shortage period. And next is the feeding of aquatic animals like azolla. Feeding of this aquatic azolla about 250 to 500 grams every day. It will also meet the feed requirement, nutrient requirement, as well increases the milk yield level by at least by half a liter a day. And next, feeding of the bravery waste. In case of bravery industry, what they will do? They will use the grain for production of beverages. Doing that, they will extract, in case of ethanol producing industry, they will extract only the starch out of it, but they will leaving behind the protein rich residue that is not used in, that is can be used in for the livestock diet. And next one is the hydroponic fodder. This can be used as a green fodder during the means during the non-feed available situations. This hydroponic fodder is get available only in 8 days. We can produce this with that too with the less amount of water. We can produce this hydroponic fodder. This fodder is very healthy and less insect. It is not having any insecticidal residue, herbicidal residue. So it is very one of the very important feeding method during the feed stress conditions. And we must regularly provide deworming drugs to our cattle. Every thrice a year, we must provide deworming drugs to our animals. This is helpful for increase the availability of nutrients and livestock to the livestock. Otherwise, that whatever we are feeding, that will be fed by the endoparasites. So we must give at least deworming drugs regularly to the animals. Along with this, we can go for the dusting in order to overcome the ectoparasite infestation. And next is the improved livestock management. These are the important mitigating measures which we have to follow in order to overcome the, in order to stop the methane emission from the livestock bodies. That is forage quality. Means we must feed the quality fodder that is having a good digestible capacity. This will reduce the methane emission in the rumen of the animals. Otherwise, if you are feeding the bad quality of the forage to the animals, it will lead to the production of methane in the rumen of the animals. So it is advisable to go for the feeding the good quality forage to the animals. And we must involve dietary ingredients. That is feeding of concentrates and meal containing lipids should be fed to the animals in order to reduce the source of emission, that is methane, from the animals. And we should not overfeed them. We should feed sufficiently, either not less or overfeeding should not be done, so that methane emission can be reduced. If you feed over, that will lead to the excess N is excreted through urea, and high amount of methane is produced in the rumen of the animals. So we should go for the precise feeding. Then grass management, that is overgrazing should not be followed, and we should go for the improved grass variety should be grown in our along the bunds in the field in order to meet water requirement and in order to reduce the soil nitrous oxide emissions. And we must go for feeding of additives and plant components to the animals. These are the different measures we must take in order to mitigate the means in order to reduce the source of emission of the methane from the livestock. And this is the last one, that after adopting all these mitigating measures and adaptive measures, one thing is that we have to plan everything based upon the agromet advisory service. All the farmers are advised to take the agromet advisory service. So this agromet advisory service is a mobile-based decision support system which helps to plan agriculture operations based on the weather forecast. It helps to it gives the real-time weather parameters, weather conditions to the farmers. It gives weather information to the farmers based on which they can plan their agriculture operations, and helps to reduce the cost of cultivation, and even and along with that they are helpful to increase their yield levels, and we can reduce the unnecessary use of the inputs. As per our research in Belgaum district, the farmers who are taking agromet advisory service and the farmers who are not taking agromet advisory service, the difference is that they were able to increase their crop yield by about 30%, and it is actually very useful in those crops which are high pesticide consuming crops. In that crops, actually using of agromet advisory service is very beneficial for the farmers in order to mitigate in order to adapt for this climate changing climatic conditions. Thank you. Hello.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Now, if there are any questions, please ask. Any questions, ma'am is with us, please ask.
Madam, good morning.
Yeah.
Good morning,
Good
madam.
morning.
I'm Dr. I'm Dr. A.V. Jansi Siniho from Veterinary College and Research Institute, Tirunelveli. It's one of the very nice presentation, madam. So, madam, any that mobile-based advisory services can be given for that livestock farmer also?
No, sir. Any farmer can take benefit here. As per our study area in Belgaum district, Karnataka state, all the farmers are getting, means based upon that you can arrange the feed for your animals. Okay, based on that forecast, you can make the arrangement. If there is a forecast is that the heavy rain is going to take place, then you can make arrangement well and before.
Okay, madam.
So that agronomic advisory service is not just giving the forecast. Along with that, it is also giving some advisory to the farmers. Means what he has to follow during such a situation. That advisory is also contained in the agronomic advisory bulletin.
Okay, madam. Thank you, madam. Thank you for your clarification, madam. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Any questions again? If there are no questions, we may consider the session to be concluded. Why? Because we have gone exactly to the time we were allotted. Ma'am, on behalf of the participants and on behalf of the organizing committee and organizing members, thank you very much for being with us, such a lovely presentation. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
We look forward to having you again. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay.